Okay, so just waiting for a couple more people to fill in. Um, my name is Robert Smith. I am the game director. Here with me is Chris Buckner. You want to introduce yourself real fast, Chris?
I am the narrative director and the game designer.
All right. Then after that, we have Clara. You want to introduce yourself real fast? All right. Then last but not least, Miles.
Hi,
Alrighty. Let's just double check something real fast. Oh, I see. Okay, we have to do the introductions again. It malfunctioned.
Awesome.
Okay, so here with me is Chris, the game designer and writer. We have Clara Capaldo, the animator and character modeler, and Miles, which is basically the level designer, last but not least. Um, this is kind of the format we're going to be playing with to just kind of go over the AMA, show you guys some footage of some of the stuff we're working on, answer your guys' questions, and it'll kind of be broken up in segments. We don't really expect it to take longer than maybe 30 minutes, 20 minutes at most, unless you guys just have that many questions. It kind of just depends. Um, so we're going to jump right into it, and let me just pull us over to what we've been working on. All right. So the first one is really just a general update of what we're doing right now to kind of get you guys up to speed. Essentially, we are working towards the vehicles, which is we're adding ground and air units. We're adding doctrines to basically give people more player choice of how they accomplish every time they run it. Give better replayability. A new recent thing we're working on as well is redoing the UI based off this a lot of feedback. They want more minimalistic HUD. They want to be able to see more, and basically just kind of build towards having more visibility in terms of like the actual screen itself. Um, and then we're gonna segue into this later, but we are adding co-op. We've heard it a lot from a lot of people in the community on the Steam discussion forums of basically just pushing that angle. So we're going to talk about the co-op, we're going to talk about the modding, and just kind of go from there. And let's see, from there we're going to basically go into a quick update video on what we've been doing. And then from there we'll move on to animations and AI. So let me just kind of throw that on there real fast.
Welcome to the second monthly update for Cepheus Protocol. Like last month, it has been another busy few weeks. So far, we've been consistently blown away by the feedback and support we've gotten from our loyal community, which continues to grow beyond our expectations. Our primary goal has been to listen to our fans and keep an open dialogue with them throughout Cepheus Protocol's early access. We look at the comments on a daily basis and at the suggestions the community has provided us, and seriously consider everything that is being shared. While we aren't always able to do everything that is asked, there have been several features requested that we already have or have planned to include in the game. Recently, we've updated our Year 1 roadmap with new graphics and goals. We also wanted to ensure that our fans see what we've already accomplished and shipped out. Some exciting things are coming down the pipeline that we are confident will make the game even better. This month, the team is working on finishing up a few areas of the map that were untextured. We have a whole new Pier-inspired theme park that will ship very soon. This area will serve as an outpost of operations for Captain Pierce and his police faction. We've also looked at the part of the island where the players start out each game and came to realize that it was a bit dull. So the team has been working to bring new life to the landscape that will open up a lot of gameplay avenues worth exploring. We think everyone will be quite impressed with what we've come up with. As we move down our roadmap, we are polishing our first horde map and we plan to release it very soon. It will also include the addition of a leaderboard, so that you can compare your score with other players from around the world. Additionally, we've been working on the factions and are beginning early programming for it. We feel this will open the game up to a whole new level and add a lot of variation, ensuring that each playthrough will be completely different. But we haven't forgotten about vehicles, one of the most requested additions. Some of you might have already seen some of the early work on our official Discord. We're excited to see this feature brought into the game, as it is something that we've all been wanting from day one. Although we're proud of everything we've released so far, we know there is much more work ahead. With the support of the community members like you, we are excited and committed to making the best game possible. Stay tuned next month for more updates.
Okay, so that was a real quick recap video that we try and do every month roughly. There's another one coming out about 5 to 10 days from now that'll kind of, I guess you could say, round out what we've done in month 3. But the next real topic we want to talk about is the AI, and then from there, Clara will take off on basically the animations. But on the AI, keep in mind that we're still tweaking and improving them based off of you guys' feedback. There's been a lot of updates that have basically just kind of pushed towards making them more competent, having them actually break up and attack compounds in, like, small little bubbles, so that they're more packed together. They're more of a what to say, they're more of a hazard towards your base and your perimeters. We are working on that in terms of, like, tonight there's going to be an update towards that front of just how the AI move, how they respond to hits. You might have seen that in our Discord that we posted a couple days ago about basically now they're going to have turn animations. They're going to react a little more responsively from when they're being meleeed. But just an important distinction about their AI is just to always remember, and this is a design philosophy rather, is that they're simulating real people. So if the guy is getting hit and he's surrounded and there's a lot of sounds going on in the world, there's always a chance that it'll be a kind of a sensory overload, like a real person where it's like, who do I prioritize, who do I shoot first, which is where you come in regardless to kind of make those override calls in terms of target these people. So keep in mind, to a certain degree, we won't be getting away from that control of, like, hey, look, they're not always gonna, like, know what to do in every situation, which is why you're gonna be the one in charge to kind of say, okay, you should probably target these guys over those guys because they're actually a greater threat. So that's one thing. And then we are working on adding more AI, more types of AI via the worms, via little guys that we'll show later in a couple videos that we have for that. And then on top of that, we're also working on obviously the factions and stuff like that, which we'll touch on again later on. So from there, we're going to jump to Clara, and she's going to kind of talk about the animations, and then we'll start taking some questions right after that. So, Clara, all you.
All right. So we have been working on adding ragdolls to our physics system that are interactive with the environment. So basically, this will allow zombies to fall down, and if they still have some health, they will stand back up again. And zombies can also collide with vehicles, and they will get stuck on the vehicle and kind of ragdoll out as you drive by. And you can use the car you're driving to push them off maps, or just steamroll through a bunch of zombies to damage or kill them. So we really want you to have a lot of fun and creative ways of killing these zombies, like just watching them fly around when you chuck a grenade at them or they step on a landmine and such. Um, and we are also working on having units rappel out of a little bird helicopter, just as a way to kind of hustle in a bunch of units to your location from far away when you need them. And we've also been working on some small things like handling the physics and momentum of the cars you drive, just to really feel the weight of them as you move throughout the map.
All right. So that pretty much touches up kind of the animation side of things. Obviously, that section is always going to be expanding. We're always looking at it based off of feedback. So yeah. And now we're going to kind of jump into questions. Basically, just like right off the bat, is there any questions people want to just kind of throw in the chat towards anyone in the team of anything about the game? And then kind of give it a moment for anyone there put some questions in there. Yeah, we're gonna be looking into ragdolls for the artillery. Any kind of like concussive effect, any kind of explosion, anything that actually can push a unit like a vehicle. We're looking into basically adding physics. We've tested the waters with the vehicles as being able to completely just ragdoll and just kick infected out of the way. It's only gonna expand for the bigger infected, and just generally for the other units X, Y, and Z. The game already is offline, so there is no reliance on a server or playing online. We're adding co-op in the next couple of months. By the end of the year is our goal. Um, let's see. Let me see if I can film clip. Oh, that was a storyboard for the intro for basically the campaign. So the idea is that essentially when we start to polish up and get the mode situated, there's going to be an intro cutscene to introduce you to pandemic mode, and then there'll be an intro cutscene like when you win. So those were some early ideas of different animatics and things that we've constructed over the years of working on the game of okay, how do they arrive? How does Winters meet Chelsea? You know. And Chris, I mean, maybe you want to kind of touch on that a little bit from a story perspective.
What particular aspect?
They were asking about the intro gifts, the animatics, and just kind of are they gonna see that in any form in the game?
Yeah, if all things go well, we do plan to include some aspect of a story mode, but even then, we want to convey the struggle between Captain Winters, the player, and Chelsea, in all the modes you play. So we do plan to have cutscenes, hopefully soon.
Yeah. Let's see. Screen stats. So screen stats are basically a statistic of what you did. Yes, we have a back-end system that actually does keep track of your kills and kind of like a daily report system. It's kind of been offline for the past couple of months. Um, we'll kind of touch on this later. Is that as we start to just kind of iron up some of the foundation and get it all situated, then you'll see a lot of that polish coming in where we're gonna add more particle effects. We're gonna add a little more icing to the cake. We're gonna just kind of bring it round circle. We're just kind of make it a 1.0 release, as you could say. Um, those are all things that we're pushing for. But yeah, we do have a system we're kind of tweaking with, and parts of it are actually implemented in the horde mode, like stat tracking and kills and all that. But there's even more depth system that kind of takes into consideration how much we were even talking about how much damage you caused. So you can by the end of the game you could be like, oh, you cost $2 billion in damage, to basically destroy the virus and the people and like the buildings and the environment that was destroyed, because we are working on destruction for parts of the world, like similar to Company Heroes in terms of scope. Um, any other questions? Otherwise, I can pull some from the the examples we have. Okay, well, we wait for more questions. I'm going to ask a question that somebody. Let's see. Okay. So I'm going to ask a question towards the story that a phone guy asked on Discord. Concerning the story, while Cirque is clearing out the city, what are the National Guard and our army doing? This is a question directed towards Chris.
Yeah, so the army's not there yet, but the National Guard was deployed almost from the moment the outbreak happened in San Francisco. They got caught up pretty early in the outbreak. I mean, of course, they went into it not knowing that there was essentially zombies around. So most of them early on were overrun and killed. The rest were pulled back to secure the bridges, tunnels, work with the police to keep people from our beginning point on Treasure Island from escaping into the other parts of the city. But they are there. We do plan to bring them in, be more seen, and actually have an impact on the world as the outbreak spreads into the San Francisco main city. Eventually, yeah, I would imagine the army would show up, but they're probably more going to be on the outsides of the perimeter as the city starts to fall.
Okay. Okay, it looks like we have some more questions here. So they're talking about dynamic interactions with the world / the map. Miles, do you want to take that one, or do you want me to?
You go ahead.
Okay, so the car alarm was kind of like a first step of like how do people like it? Does it resonate with people? That's the first step. The next step is basically having more randomly generated events that occur during the game, whether it be things that are just like random narrative strokes, things like little mini events that occur that sometimes you could jump into, sometimes you don't have to. Um, we're gonna have search helicopters and other things that'll basically be running around all the maps, and essentially like they'll like put their lights on you. And I believe the search helicopters are Cirque, or are they the Coast Guard, Chris?
They're Coast Guard right now.
The Coast Guard. So, we're gonna have the Coast Guard running around, little small, little like narrative tidbits that'll be different every time you play. Um, but for right now, like we're kind of scaling up on like little small, little environmental things that'll just be dynamic in certain zones. Um, it's gonna be very dependent on the zones, because we're gonna talk about that later. Is we're actually gonna be adding 4 maps, well 3, because we already have one, to the zones, so you can jump between all of them. And to answer your questions about will the stats include individual soldier stats, um, that's a good question. We haven't actually gotten as far as that, because it seems like we're going to get away from actually having you name your soldiers and having preset names, so that we can expand the current pool of units that you have. If you go on Discord and you look at the dev updates or announcements channel, you can see an example of the HUD direction a lot of our community has been pushing for recently. And that essentially is pushing for more of the group over the individual, where they could scale up the size of the engagements, but still keep the tactical layer. Because, as I'm going to show later on, some of the map designs, some of the things that they're starting now, is that the battles are only going to get bigger, and your friends are going to be coming with you to basically, help you control different parts of the world. Let's see. Has the news helicopters been stopped? That'd be a
Yes,
question for
they
you,
have.
Chris. Okay, so
Yes, they have been.
we're gonna leave it at just a simple answer, cause well we don't. Okay, we won't talk about that story.
Yeah, if you guys get the book, there is a nice little chapter in there about the news and how crazy they're going with the lack of information, and the governor is kind of powerless, and yeah, so they want to know what's going on, but they don't get to.
Yeah. You're going to be able to put soldiers on top of buildings and they'll be able to rappel up and down them. Um, to the point of going in interior zones, we had that in earlier prototypes. The QA played it briefly, but it was one of those areas where if we're going to go back to that, it's going to be only when we do a full-fledged campaign. Like, a year from now, where basically we've kind of gathered our support. We understand the limitations of what works and what doesn't. The framework is completely done. And then now we're going to go back and we're going to give you a play-by-play story of, like, how did Chelsea become what she did? Where is Winters' background from? What's her personal stake? Who runs Cirque? Stuff like that. And, like their hierarchy, their structure. That's more of a long-term goal that we're still reevaluating on a month-by-month basis as we just kind of start to chip away aspects of the roadmap. Let's see where we are on time. So we can kind of make sure we don't... Okay, so we're going to come back to questions. So if you have questions, do save them. We're going to have another question part at the end, and then we'll talk about the co-op and modding right after that, and then we'll probably add a little bit more questions at the end since you guys have so many. Vehicles need to be reloaded. I'm not sure about that one, if you can expand upon the vehicles one, but save that for the second Q&A. We're going to just really quickly jump into the worms and the new enemy types of Clara. So let me go ahead and transition into that. Let's see here. So Clara, do you kind of want to talk about the Leviathan and the little guys?
Oh, yes. So the Leviathans act as this reoccurring mini boss fight that will periodically show up throughout your play sessions. And they're meant to act as a counter defense from Chelsea. So it will mostly target territories that are closer to her territories. So basically, you'll want to really fortify your outposts to prepare for this guy because he can easily destroy a weak base. And the Leviathan also comes teaming with these little creatures that crawl out from under its skin. And they are fast and can swarm you if you aren't careful. And they are easy enough to kill, but they are designed to suck the blood from your units and give it to the Leviathan as a buff. So yeah, you really don't want to ignore these little guys. And we really want this Leviathan fight to be challenging, but a rewarding experience for you to face.
Kind of want to go into like maybe some of the things you've been working on with Derek. Is just kind of like, like talk about some of the attacks.
Yeah, so the worm has several attacks that it can do itself to the unit. So it has swipe attacks where it'll kind of slowly come in and just swipe, and you'll want to move your units out of the way because it can just, it can wipe out all of them in one hit. And then it has a bite attack that's kind of more designed to select members specifically. And then it's got like a roar that it can use to summon infected from nearby. They can hear it and they'll come running. And then of course it's got its shake attack. Well, actually that's not really an attack, but it kind of shakes off these little guys that'll drop down, and then those guys will come and they'll attack you. And then they have their own attacks of like swiping and biting. And they'll kind of like slowly drain the life from your units, and then they'll take it back over to the worm and give it to him, and that'll kind of buff him up. So yeah.
All right, so in a sense, they're going to be a force to be, met. You're going to definitely have to strategize, and in some cases, you might have to just abandon a base when they show up. Because if you're not prepared, you don't have vehicles, or you don't have some of the later tech for weapons that we're going to be adding in, that we're going to kind of go over for the doctrines. It could cause a wipe. It could destroy your entire base. And you didn't really kind of talk about how the little guys how they even formed. Like, where do they come from?
Where do they come from?
Like, like how they fall off the big guy, the Leviathan.
Yeah, they like come out from like under his scales, and he kind of shakes them off, and they disperse.
Yeah.
kind of an area of effect. Yeah.
So the
They're
longer
symbiotic.
they're symbiotic. So the longer that the actual Leviathan is alive, the more of these babies are gonna jump off. Kind of like the Nihilus worm from StarCraft, for instance. So the idea is you kind of want to focus this baby and kill it as quickly as possible. Um, I think that pretty much wraps up it for the Leviathan. Would you say, Claire?
Yep.
Okay,
Until we
awesome.
get to the questions.
Yeah, of course. So now we're gonna jump into the factions. Let me go ahead and let that transition. All right, Chris. So for the factions, you kind of want to give an insight on just who they are and what they're bringing to the table.
Sure. So as you know, you play the game, you play as the CERC, which is the main faction who's sent in to stop the outbreak. And of course, the enemy faction is Chelsea Trader, Patient Zero. She's trying to spread the virus beyond the containment and effectively wants to infect the entire world. So we're adding 2 additional factions that will impact the world as you play. One of them is the police, which is under command of Captain Pierce. The police have essentially kind of been trapped into the city. You know, they don't get much help. It's like if you're within the quarantine, they've decided that you're more or less expendable. So Pierce is trying to keep his own people together, grab as many civilians as he can, and fortify a position, and perhaps fight their way out, work with you. But you're going to have an impact on him. If you work against Pierce's own objectives, he's going to get mad at you and start attacking. The other one will be Natalie Washington. She's a former Marine, more of a free radical and anarchist. She's used to bad situations. She knows how to survive, and she's pulling together a bunch of other anarchists. And their only goal is just to survive at any cost. They'll take what they need from either the player, from the police, from innocent civilians. It's really kind of strongest survives. And you'll be able to interact with them as well. But that's more going to be like a moral gray zone. Like you get benefits from working with her, but you have to do some pretty questionable stuff.
And again, you'll be able to make this choice. They'll introduce themselves to you in newer game sessions. They'll be coming in sometime late next month, I would say, to maybe even look at my calendar here. They're aiming for late September, maybe early October. Just kind of depends on how the schedule works out. And we're really taking a lot of inspiration from Fallout. I mean, it's a very simplistic way of doing like relationship with factions, but the idea is that you can gain favor with either or just by your actions in the game. You know, just by you going in and playing the game and just being screw it, anyone in the way dies. If they're between me and my mission of killing Chelsea, if there's some civilians in the way, you airstrike them, you throw some grenades, and you're aiming at the infected, but you cause casualties with the civilians, Pierce will hate you. So now at that point, you're going to have that hidden resentment building up with Pierce. He might start to actually, try and kill you, or when you get to that point of the boiling point with him. But then, I guess indirectly, you're building a relationship with Natalie because she sees, the enemy of my enemy as my friend. So at that point, you could start to ally with Natalie, maybe hunt down people that have escaped from her compound. You'll have bounties of people that basically, have turned against her, enemies of her, and you'll be able to kill them to gain favor with her and help civilians and basically, protect Pierce to basically get in favor with him. Um, Obviously, we'll be adjusting and playing around with this as we kind of work on things, and it'll be like a collaborative effort between us and the community to just kind of find the right balance and kind of go from there. But definitely our goal is late next month to kind of push this out there, at least on the public testing, so you guys can just take it apart, break it, see how you feel about it, and then we just kind of take all that feedback and apply it into like the full release. So it'd just be like a week or two later, I imagine. Um, so, is there anything else you kind of want to touch on for the factions, Chris? Before we segue with Miles to the world map?
Do you want to bring up about the people asking to play as Patient Zero's faction?
Oh, are they asking that question? Oh,
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of it lately.
so just to kind of get it out there, right now our goal, design-wise, based off of just our the scope of what we're able to do as a team, is to expand upon Cirque, add doctrines, add replayability that easily echoes into 12 plus hours. Adding replayability so every time you play it's a different experience. Um, it's not a design goal right now, at least, to basically go down the path of allowing you to play as Chelsea or play as the factions yet. It's just purely just let's get the Cirque playable, let's get them balanced, let's add a lot of replayability via their doctrines and via the tech they get, and then on top of that, let's bring in more maps, let's bring in co-op, let's bring in modding, and then from there, that will kind of fluster to kind of have like the perfect package we would imagine for what we're aiming for the game. So now we're gonna jump right into the world map, and Miles is gonna kind of talk about the what we're doing. What do we bring to the table for like expanding the amount of available zones. So Miles, it's all you.
Hello, hello. uh, recently, I've been working on re-overhauling the horde map. It's basically an entirely new map. It is about 2.5 times larger than the previous version of it, with a outlying city and an opposite island with a cityscape adjacent. On top of that, we are bringing in 3 new maps: the Presidio area, Angel Island, which is a park, like a national forest park. The Presidio will be a bit more open and include some more elevation. It'll be a bit different. And then finally, the downtown San Francisco area, which will basically be an intense city operation kind of deal, close quarters, not a lot of open areas due to it being, downtown. Um, Aside from that, uh, last last month, I do believe, we overhauled the southern island of the main world map to be well, more in line with the AI's pathing ability to make it so that they can't actually get stuck as often, and to try and add a few more variations of locations, such as the beachfront gated community and the marshland area. On top of that, um, when you're playing together, like in co-op, and let's say your friends go off into another island and to capture it, you can either stay on the main island, you can go with them, that choice is up to you. Let's say you take the whole main island and both of you go to one of the new separate islands on the map. All these will be connected, you can fast travel to them. The 3 different maps, will technically 4: Angel Island, Presidio, Downtown, and the main map itself. If you take one of those maps entirely, make sure you would probably want to make sure you have your defenses set up properly, because you can get re-invaded, um, from either the factions causing trouble over there and Chelsea coming back trying to retake the island. So, being set up to move on, or having one of your friends stay behind and watching it, making sure everything's stable over there. But at the end of the day, the choice is up to you. Um, that will tie in with the co-op aspect of the game and the vehicles, bringing in more, faster ways to travel across the island themselves. And I think that just about covers it. I think.
Okay.
Did I miss anything, Robert?
No, you're good. You're good. And then the
All right,
important
cool.
thing to remember is every map is going to introduce a new spin on like how you combat in that zone. Angel Island's going to be wide open. It's going to be a national park that's now turned into a research lab that Cirque has come in and basically augmented the entire island, and that's where they're transporting the infected from the actual like treasure island that they kind of set as like a little isolated colony that basically it breaks contagion. Chelsea basically starts getting an infection type that we're going to introduce later on that allows her to jump around a transport unit to be able to jump around and infect zones. And then obviously the factions will use boats and other things like that for them to be able to get around the zones and then basically, reinforce their positions and to just invade your territories. Um, Chris, is there anything you really want to add for just kind of some of the backstory for some of the zones that we're adding?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, if anybody's familiar with San Francisco, you'll probably notice that our treasure island doesn't look at all like the real one. So, like, from the start, we initially tried to make it like 1-to-1, but just it's not very appealing for gameplay. So we've been like theming things. Imagine the cities have like a massive influx in cash, and they're just building everything up. So when we get to the new zones, Angel Island will feature like a large Navy base. There used to be one there, but it's been shut down for years. But so we imagine like it never got shut down. It's still important. Yeah, but there's also, like Robert says, a lot of open areas. It is a park. You'll see the impact of people's everyday lives of just trying to have fun and what happens when an outbreak happens. Presidio is one I'm really excited about. It has a lot of variety. It's a beautiful location in real life, but we have added a lot of theme elements to it. And then the downtown is going to be basically an idea of what the worst of it can be, essentially a war zone and a representation of what would happen if the virus spreads beyond San Francisco.
All right. And then if you actually look on the left slide, you'll see that that is the current design that we're just kind of playing with on the Presidio. A lot of marshlands, um, like interconnected little cities, little bitty parts of it. A lot of variation. Not as like broken up. It's kind of like the horseshoe that we have right now for Treasure Island. And
Yeah, real life isn't really good for video games.
yeah, we still have to make some adaptations. So obviously, as we just kind of play with it and just kind of find what feels right, what you'll probably see us just kind of get away from the real world Bay Area anyway. And to that point, you'll still start on Treasure Island when this update comes out. This update is aimed for right after the factions hit. That's where we're adding this. So the goal is to basically have this shift around October to around November for just the total adding in the 3 zones, and then I'll go into the rest of the year when we get to those slides. It's one campaign, and it's kind of built into modding. The framework of modding is the idea is that Pandemic Mode will be campaigns that you start with yourself or your friends, and now you're fighting you're fighting this war to stop Chelsea, to stop basically the virus from spreading. So the idea is that you'll be able to jump from province to province, and your friends can jump from province to province. But I want to leave that for the co-op section, so save those questions for after the co-op section, if I haven't answered them when we get to the co-op section. So I mean that's it in a sense. Is there anything you want to add to that, Chris, or?
No, you covered it.
Okay. So now we're gonna jump into the novel and just basically the general story updates. Before we do, let me show a trailer for the Steam store page that just went live today for the novel. Let me just kind of pull that up for you folks. So, Chris, you kind of want to talk about the novel and just kind of what it brings to the table to the world of Cepheus Protocol?
Yeah. So we realized we had a lot of story we wanted to tell, but not really the resources right now to put it all in the game. So I wanted to write a novel. I was inspired by the World War Z novel because what's unique about that it's obviously about a zombie invasion, but each chapter is from a different point of view of the greater conflict that's happening. So in our novel, each chapter will also present a different point of view of what's going on both before and during, and maybe a little bit after what is supposed to happen after the game. There will be recurring characters like Captain Winters. You'll see the military aspect of what's going on, how she's conflicted by her orders and what her duty is, and then her own personal feelings because she lost a sister in a horrible incident that happened just prior to Cirque being created. And then there'll be Dr. Wu. She has personal motivations for why she needs Chelsea to be captured as opposed to kill. Captain Winters wants Chelsea dead. It's just easier way to deal with something. But there will also be other point of views that from like Natalie Washington, Captain Pierce. You see how their organizations come to be, what their struggle is. You see the governor. You see events that happened prior, how the virus even got to San Francisco in the first place, how Chelsea got infected, how Chelsea is a actual person who's a victim in all this, and she doesn't necessarily want to spread the virus, but she's being consumed by it and has no real choice. But yet there's also kind of inner darkness to herself, and all that will be explored in the book when it comes out. So hopefully everybody will want to buy it because us writers are starving and we want our stories to be read.
All right. So that kind of summarizes just the kind of general novel section. Is there anything you kind of want to give from a story update of the direction of the pandemic mode itself, the Steam is going in, Steam build going in?
Well, yeah. Some aspects of the novel are based off missions that we had written for a single player. So I mean, it does give kind of teaser of what certain missions could be if we do end up getting to a single player. As the novel doesn't directly relate to pandemic mode, it's more of a player's choice in it, but the themes and certain ideals of what's going on do correlate between the two.
Do you want to talk about Typhoon and how they might integrate in later on to pandemic mode?
Well, that's a secret, ain't it?
Well, to be continued then for that one, boys and girls. Read the book. There's hints to them. Alright, so from there, we're going to move to questions. So, we'll do questions, and then we'll move on to co-op and modding. So, let me go ahead and pull that slide up for you folks. And hit us with your questions. Your best ones.
We won't answer some of the older ones.
Yeah, let's see if we can scroll up real fast and see if we've missed any of you folks' questions. So I did answer the co-op thing. It is 4 players. The blacked out part of the map on Treasure Island. Chris, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, that was a really boring area that we made that we decided to get rid of. Now we want it to be a bridge that connects to a giant natural power plant. That's an artificial island just a little bit off the coast of Yerba Island, which is that part of Treasure Island. Not really sure why it's still black, but that's really up to Robert and level designers to decide to do with that. But hopefully we do plan to create a connecting bridge there, and you can get a new little area to play in.
Yeah, and on that point, essentially, like you're saying, that's going to be an end-game zone that you go to, and we're playing with the idea of it having ramifications for Treasure Island, for power, and other parts of the San Francisco area, but we're still kind of treading that line of just kind of how deep we want to go with actually controlling parts of the map have affecting consequences on other provinces that you own, like power, lights, X, Y, and Z. But yeah, it's going to be a power plant in the middle, another artificial island, and it'll be an end-game zone where if you went there when you first started, you'd get demolished, destroyed, absolutely. So when you go and you do your little exposition, I can't even say it correctly, when you do your little mission to basically go to that zone, you would essentially, load up your best guys your crack fire team, and basically try and gain control of that province that Chelsea's already going to have control of right off the boot. Let's see here. Okay, so questions. Let's see. One second, let me refresh the chat. It's being silly. Okay, there we go. Oh, your thing is just so long it's malfunctioning. I see. Okay. So Uber's question. He's asking about vehicles. Do you want to kind of go into the vehicles we're adding, Chris?
Yeah, so you have the little scout guy, which you can play him right now, right?
Only in the public beta.
Okay, public beta. Then there's going to be a kind of modernized Humvee. That one does fire. Those are your basic starter vehicles. When we get into the doctrines, they all have additional vehicles. Like we'll have like our version of an Apache, hopefully an Osprey, a AC-130, Spectre gunship, Little Bird for getting you around the map quickly, and a Striker.
Yes. And keep in mind, some of those will be locked behind doctrines. So when we introduce the doctrine update, that will basically allow you to spec into like, okay, I want to go motorized command. I want to play the game, especially in a co-op direction where like each player will choose a doctrine and they'll play within their subset of their how they want to play the game, like what passives they want to unlock, what ability, like what vehicles they want to unlock as they play the game to unlock like the Apache or unlock the motor version of the Striker, for instance, because we're gonna have it where like some vehicles are gonna have entire kits to change out the way that they fight. So like you'll have a 50 cal version of the Striker, and then you'll have an anti-tank one that's for the juggernauts and for the worms, the bigger creatures. Then you'll have a mortar variant, and then you'll have a transport variant. And the idea is that you tech into motorized, you start to kill the infected, gather DNA, that accumulates a doctrine points as you're fighting the war, localized to that player, and then as you tech it in, you'll basically choose from a tech tree. I want that. I want this. I'm going to go up this tree. And then when I've grinded out that tree, I'm going to go to the other segment just to kind of like bolster up my enemy with, well, not my enemy, rather, my units with other passives and other vehicles that maybe just aren't as important to you. Maybe you're going to rush straight for the Apache, because that's your end all. And you just want to do an Apache run and then support your allies on the ground. Um, so that's a quick sense of the vehicles. Because again, based off of feedback, based off of just how things go, uh, we're looking to possibly even add more doctrines than the base 3. It just kind of comes down to just kind of how people feel about it, and then we'll go from there. There's another question here for new enemies. Clara, why don't you talk about some of the new enemies that we were talking about for the infected?
Oh, you mean like the anti-air and artillery?
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are in very early stages right now. I do have some sketches, but yeah, definitely early stages. But we do really want to incorporate at least 2 more infected into the game. We're going to try and get at least 2 more infected into the game. The anti-air is, what it sounds like. He's gonna make sure that when the helicopters come flying over, he might like knock your guys out of the sky. And yeah, anti-artillery will be like a long range shooting infected. Like that one won't be so up close and personal, but will be kind of from a distance, designed to take out your turrets. So yeah, I'm really excited to get to work on those. Hopefully, in a couple months, hopefully we'll have even more to show you guys. But yeah, really excited for that.
Definitely. And then to go to your question about, let's see, enemies, we're always adding new enemies. The factions are going to have their own classes of like the snipers, they're going to have their own assaults, they're going to have their own melees, they're going to have their own camps that they maintain. So you'll definitely get more enemies just when the factions come in. You'll get enemies from the civilians because you don't know what they're going to do. Like, especially if you've been being a dick all game, and you've been killing them left and right and building up a negative reputation with the civilians, and they might just shoot you outright, or they might just run away. So you don't. In some cases, they might just engage you, and then pull some aggro from another faction, or pull some aggro in from the infected, and now you have a battle on your hand that you never even expected. And now you got to make the call: do I pull reinforcements over to basically dispatch the infected and whoever else is going to come aggroed over, or do I just pull out, reevaluate, and maybe try a different route if I really don't want to deal with this right now? Kind of comes down to basically just the players and what they choose at that point, or if they just want to go all in and blow everything up, they can. Um, and then horde improvements, we kind of touched on that very briefly earlier, but we're always looking at improving the intelligence of the infected, and that's gonna be a reoccurring theme all the way up to release. Like I can't conclusively say right now we're done with them. It's gonna be like, okay, we put this in there, we ship the factions, we ship the vehicles, the spitters are inadequate. The blow-up guys are getting themselves kills that are not effective. So we're always looking at that. We're always tweaking. We're always trying to find time to augment some of these systems between the major roadmap goals. I mean, a major goal for us is to make the spitters, A, be able to attack air units via their projectiles, B, act more like a pack hunter like the velociraptors from Jurassic Park, where they'll pull you into ambushes, they'll play games with you, they'll use bird calls or use sounds to pull you into kill boxes. They're not going to be suicidal. So that's an example of something we're pushing for, because the spitters are going to end up being the assassins. They're going to be the ones on the rooftops. They're going to be the ones that are stalking you, getting other units into position, playing mind games, pull you into a kill box and hit you on all sides. Especially if you're not paying attention, and especially if you're not using your thermal vision, and they'll tear you apart. Um, let's see. So the 4 zones will be simulated in real time. So when one of the players, whether you or the other players that are playing co-op, are in them, then we'll simulate them like a chess game. Like, okay, they took D9, and then when you go in there, some factions might own some territory. Some game, Chelsea might have wiped them all out and have complete dominance, and you're coming into a wholly infected zone. Maybe the factions somehow managed to fight off Chelsea and they own 3/4 of it. Maybe they own the entire territory, and you're allied with them. So the idea is you don't really know what's going to happen, and when you're not in that province, we're simulating it in terms of like who owns that territory and who's taking ground. So when you go into that zone, you don't know what the state of affairs is going to be in until you get in there, you're loading, you're like, oh, there's the exit, I should probably leave. I don't have enough units, kind of deal. Um, Side missions. Um, we are playing around with side missions in the horde mode right now. Miles, you want to talk about a little bit of that?
Sure. Basically, one of the side missions we have set up is a civilian rescue mission. So in the horde map, in the city area, and a few in the port, not close to the player base, but since the port has been enlarged rather by a large amount, I figure I can squeeze one in there at least and see how it feels first. I need to test it and see how it goes to get the final locations for the missions. However, when the mission will pop up and it will say there are civilians waiting to be rescued, and you'll see a location on your map, and generally that will be outside the port, so you'll actually have to leave your shell, your little base, to go and rescue them for a cash bonus. It's not going to be a game over type thing. I'm still playing with that idea, because that just doesn't seem like it'd be very fun to not save one civilian and then get a game over. However, the idea is to bring more replayability to the horde mode, bring more random aspects to it, like it won't be the same thing every time, and to make the game mode intentionally harder on top of that while you're trying to survive, because keep in mind you're going to have to be rescuing the civilians during a wave, so you're going to have to figure out some mode of transportation to get from point A to point B and back again safely to collect the reward. Because I forgot to mention that. My apologies. You have to go to the location, grab the civilians. They become player-controlled units. They will not show up in your unit bar. Rather, you select them just with a simple click or a drag movement and bring them back with your units back to the player base on the shore, or well, dock area of the port close to the player base. But yeah, that's basically how that will work,
Oh,
barring some tweaks and
and
improvements.
to add to that, so we are. If you guys are familiar with Skyrim and Fallout, myself and one of my programmers, Derek, have already kind of talked about this loosely here and there. Is we do want to incorporate mini events. A civilian runs up to you, and he's like, "Oh my God, I don't know what's going on. You know, like, can you help me?" And then he'll follow you, and then you'll follow him, and he'll be ambushing you. And it's just basically some AI that'll just turn the basically red and attack you. You know, you walk by a car and someone blows their brains out. You know, little small mini events to add more life to the world, to basically push that event. Every time you play it, you're like, random things will happen. And just kind of like, flesh it out. And it's very similar to games like Fallout and Skyrim. We're gonna kind of be taking like a page out of that to basically, add little stuff like that. Like, let's say, for instance, I would say that we're aiming to have them 20 to 30-second mini missions. They just kind of add a little life. Um, so that is kind of to that point as well. And yeah, you can control the civvies. They're not going to be automated. You get full control of them when you do have something where it's like, oh hey, get these civilians from point A to point B. So they won't be automatic. You don't have to worry about them like running off and getting themselves all killed. Um, any other questions before we move into co-op and modding? So, I believe that means airstrikes, right? You're talking. You want more tactical options from the air. Then I'm gonna have you take this one, Chris, if it's what I think it is.
Uh,
Um,
my impression he means drones, like typical scout drones.
maybe. When you say drone support, are you talking about like airstrike types, or are you talking
Like
about?
like a predator or a global hawk or something like that.
Uh, I'm gonna assume he means that. So, Chris, why don't you talk about some of the airstrikes we're adding in from the doctrines, and then we'll move into the co-op and modding.
Okay, so he means both. Yeah, well, the airstrikes don't come from drones. Like I said, it's AC-130 Spectre gunship. We already got the A-10 Warthog in there, and then there'll be another off-map support in the form of a Coast Guard cutter using its 5mm cannon. But do we have a Predator strike? I don't remember if that's in the
We do
doctrine.
not, but we have gas attack. We have the fire one, the incendiary one. There's the AC-130 bombardment, and then I feel like I'm missing one. And then we have the airstrike we have right now. I believe. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Basically, the Coast Guard cutter serves the purpose of what Predator strike would be. It's more of a surgical, not to blow up an entire block, but hit a particular target. As for like scout drones, we have other means that we're introducing for long range scouting. Like we want to introduce a dog into one of the doctrines, a combat special forces dog. That would essentially be like a drone. But it's not outside the realm of possibility to add small aerial vehicles or even unmanned land vehicles
And we are
that can
adding
do
a
that
mule.
job.
That
That's
counts.
for ammo resupply.
I mean, because like the assault doctrine is gonna have like those people like to constantly push, 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 push into
Yeah.
like zones. We're adding in a mule, the mobile resupply, where basically it'll hold huge quantities of ammo for people will just like to keep a convoy moving. Um, But yeah, definitely for airstrikes, we're playing with that. And keep in mind, the line of sight rule is going to be broken for vehicles. Vehicles can see in every direction, so it's always good to kind of build those into your strategies because they'll give you a lot of oversight. Um, so words of encouragement or panic as your troops are being overran or shot down. So is that more so like, I guess you could say, banter between the units to kind of show the desperation of the situation? Doesn't really have any gameplay implications, but it's more for immersion, is what you're asking? For Uber? And then I'll jump to your sexy, and then I'm gonna move over to the co-op and modding. I think I'm gonna act like I think I know what Uber is talking about. Yeah, okay. So it is. So when it comes down to that's more of a 1.0 thing for like when the game is done, all the core framework is in. Then we're gonna go back and we'll add some quality of life things like that, where just the people that really want to get immersed in the world can. Where your units will yell at each other, like company heroes, for instance, where they're always saying something. You know, they're always kind of like getting you. It's one thing for the game to play right. It's another thing for the VO and the sound effects and the music to kind of like engulf you into that world, that universe. So that is going to be something that we're going to push towards long wise once we have everything else like the base situated. We're sure everything's final, and then we'll go in and we'll start figuring out like little burks, little conversational things that people will say to each other. That's definitely something I've wanted to dabble in and get implemented in some shape, manner, or form. The kind of when you're zoomed in and you're watching them with tab, you can kind of like feel like you're almost in their shoes. Um, for your question, Shiny, we are dabbling with maybe making a character creator that will allow you to make your own version of Winters via like a couple of presets, and you make it like a hero unit that you can potentially lead other squads or replace Winters. But we're still playing with that. That's still early discussions. We're still trying to figure out if it fits within our scope and where we can fit that in there. But that's something that I personally love from Battle for Middle Earth 2 and from Rise of the Witch King. Basically, like those kind of systems where you can kind of like make your own hero, choose the abilities you want, and just kind of like fit them into your hierarchy of how you're playing the game, the squads. Um, but no promises. But we are definitely, it's something that we have talked about in the past, and we're still I'm advocating looking to just kind of sneak it in there. Maybe even just like as a complimentary patch sometime next year when we have a moment to basically just kind of like do it while maybe playing with other systems, balance stuff. Um, the striker motor is part of the doctrines, and that will come with the doctrines update. So when we do the doctrines update, you'll get everything: the skill tree, all the vehicles. You start a new game. You choose a doctrine when you first load in, and then from there you just start allocating points to figure out what vehicles you want to unlock, what passives do you want, based off of your playstyle. For squads, if you look on our Discord right now, we are playing with actually having squads more customizable, having more of your squads, and having less visual clutter. So theoretically, you could make 9 squads if based off of the new system, because you could have 2 guys on one squad, and you could actually take the squads down and you could dock them to different parts of the screen. So you can go on our Discord and take a look at that, and you can see the UI we're playing with in the suggestions Discord text channel, and it's actually pretty darn cool. It reminds me of World in Conflict quite a bit, but I feel like it kind of modernizes it a little bit more by the ability of once you set someone to a squad, you can now grab that squad and put them anywhere on your screen, and then you can basically minimize that squad, and then press your number keys to basically select people that entire squad, whether it be a sniper team or whatever it is. Um, so now we are going to jump right into the roadmap and just kind of bring it to a conclusion and answer any questions that you guys might have and go from there. So let me kind of bring this up full screen. And we will transition into that. So what you see right now is essentially our new updated roadmap based off of all the systems we've been talking about. You can see that we snuck in 3 for the end of the year. Now, right now, our goal is to have this entire roadmap done by December. You know, like completely situated. And then at the end of December, we're going to basically go back, reevaluate. Maybe there'll be some bleed over, but ultimately our goal is to wrap this entire roadmap by the end of the year. So, the first part of vehicles will ship in the next week or 2, roughly. Then you'll see Doctrine sometime in the middle of next month. You'll see the Worm probably in the first 2 weeks of next month. You'll see the Factions, if not the end of next month, or the beginning of next month. And then you'll see World Map Co-op and modding will be around October to December. So we're going to have a solid, 3-month chunk between October, November, and December. October's goal is to basically have the world map out. November is the co-op. December is the modding. Right now, that's our current schedule of how to get it all situated. But like everyone says, no plan survives contact with the enemy. So, there might be a little bit of adjustment here or there based off of bugs. We need to go back and reevaluate a system because something was brought to our attention on our Discord or our Steam discussion. And the teams volunteer. So, obviously sometimes their day jobs might get in the way. So, it's a balancing act. So just keep that in mind. But this is our intention going into the rest of the year. And to kind of just expand upon the co-op segment, we've been talking about, we've been playing it internally, and just kind of figuring out how we're going to do it, is the idea is that it's jump in, jump out. Everything is ran from the host. So anyone can just jump in and play it. When they join your session, you get control of a squad. So it's like, basically you join, it's like Stellaris almost, where you get to choose, okay, you're going to control these guys, you all share the same money, you share the same buildings, you're all working towards the same goal. So kind of like Stellaris and Halo Wars almost. So player 1 can gift you units, or you can just use their money and buy some. And call it an engineer and start building your own little base off there in the corner. And then now you can start running joint raids. You'll share the same pop, so it doesn't become like, basically a massing war. But obviously we're going to be looking into increasing the population a little bit here and there. Right after the factions update, going into the co-op, in that period, we're going to be looking at the population. We're going to figure out how it feels going into co-op. Do we need to increase it? Did the vehicles and the factions level the playing field, or do the players need a little bit more firepower? So keep in mind, we'll be looking into that, reevaluating it as we go into co-op. But again, you'll join a game, the player 1 will basically accept your joining. He'll choose what he gives you. You'll be able to do voice chat, you'll be able to do text chat. You'll be able to share, you share resources by default, so there's no trading. You share your building. And let's say, for instance, it's 4-player, right? So let's say 2 of your friends want to go and fight Natalie on Treasure Island. And let's say you guys are tired of starting in Treasure Island. 2 could go to the Presidio, and you 2 could both play your wars and help each other whenever you want. Or each one could choose their own province and push that. And then you could jump and send reinforcements over from your armies to help each other out and do raids. Let me go ahead and just turn that down then. I'll just turn it off completely just to solve that. But the idea is that you choose the way you play, and everyone has an effect on player 1's world. So, and you're by no means tethered to player 1. You can take your engineers, load them up on a fast travel system, and go over to the Presidio and start building, and they can do whatever they want to do in Treasure Island, and then you can just meet up and help each other occasionally. Or you can all start on Treasure Island, build a mega base, start running raids together, and basically just start clearing it out from Treasure Island to Angel Island, then to downtown, and then finally to Presidio. It's completely up to you, and every time you play, it'll be different. And with adding these other maps, with adding the factions, with adding, the AI improvements in the vehicles, you'll start to see your playtime per campaign increase to 8 to 12 hours. Our goal is to have pandemic mode where it takes at least 12 hours to wipe out all 4 maps with your buddies. Kill the factions or ally with one of them, and hunt down and kill Chelsea. Now, from there, the next thing is modding. So I kind of mentioned this earlier in the conversation, but the beauty of the way we're setting up our system is the modding is now people can come in and they can make a campaign for Starship Troopers. They can make a campaign for Halo that will be addable. You can put your characters in, you can put your weapons in, and your maps, and now you can basically have a campaign where you're fighting the Flood over multiple maps. Or maybe you're fighting the bugs from Starship Troopers, and your campaign is jumping between all these planets, which are in the retrospect of a normal game, would be, a normal geographical region. So our goal is to give modders the ability to make their own campaigns, theme them, retheme and reconceptualize the factions for their gun bearing units that they want to have, remodel, or rather replace the models for the weapons, for the characters, adjust the numbers of damage. But in a sense, we're going to basically be going as strenuously, or rather extensively, as XCOM 2 per se. We're going to be looking into making a custom mod launcher that will essentially allow you to set up your mod load order. We'll be partnering with a modding platform to essentially kind of get it out there. It will not be on the Steam Workshop. It will be on mod.io, and essentially that'll allow us to just kind of have a direct connection to the company, easy to communicate. So that's something we'll be pushing, is basically putting it on mod.io, which is basically like a subdivision. It's like another thing similar to ADDB, same company. And that will be where we put up our mods. You'll be able to upload inside the game. You'll be able to download from inside the game. And we're going to play with being able to have the ability to adjust the mod load order live. But most likely it'll all be a reliance on the launcher that we're going to make. That'll basically allow you to do that. Our goal is to basically start getting modders in sometime towards the end of the year in terms of an early access program for modders that basically want to mod our game. They can contact us via a form we're going to put up in the next couple of weeks, and that will be like, okay, you want early access to our dev tools. So let's get you set up. Let's figure out what aspects of our mod tools you like and what aspects you hate. And then based off of that, we'll work on our mod tools, improve it, expose more variables, and work with the modders to make sure that it's a good base, a good location, a good little I guess you could say framework for them to build the creations and the stories and the little interesting, crazy things that they want to do in our game. And we believe that will this roadmap will bring it around circle where at the end of the year we can reevaluate. Need be, put some more resources on some things that need a little more attention, and bring it around circle to finishing it. So that in a sense kind of finishes up the co-op and the modding discussion part of things. I'm gonna have one last, I guess you could say, question section where you can ask questions to anyone on the team, and then we're just gonna pretty much conclude it there. And then this video will go up sometime tonight to tomorrow on YouTube. For those that basically want to send it out to people. I know some people weren't able to tune in because of the time zone or work. So we'll definitely be making this available on YouTube for those that want to watch it later on. So I guess we'll jump back to questions. Does anyone have any other questions they kind of want to throw towards the team? We have about maybe 10 minutes, I would say, for Q&A.
There was one about our inspiration, with Prototype.
Right. So do you want to talk about the story and I'll talk about the gameplay, Chris?
Yeah, sure. So, yes, we were indeed inspired by Prototype. Probably a little later in our development. Both me and Robert are aware of that game, and we do like the game. But me personally, I was inspired by an old, I think it's PS1 or PS2 called Parasite Eve. Company Heroes is a big one, obviously. I mean, just speaking for myself, I have 600 hours in that game. I know Robert has played a lot of it too.
Thousands.
Uh, yeah. And we get inspiration just from really, I mean, sometimes it's a single mechanic. Sometimes it's a game not even related to this game. And then of course movies and TV. I mean, both Robert and I love zombies and stuff, but we wanted to create every zombie thing has the same thing. It's always after the infection, and we want one that explores what happens during it and add that kind of military government point of view of it, because it always feels like the military and zombie TV shows and movies is an afterthought, like they always just get wiped out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's hard to really nail down if there's any one thing that inspired the game, other than our own desire to really just make a cool boots on the ground fighting the infected city by city, block by city block.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we just wanted to make a game where you played as the military and you got to choose the doctrine of how you were going to fight the virus. Were you going to burn it all down? Were you going to be the nice guy? Were you going to take the middle road and try and find out, like, a peaceful solution for everything? And that's what this roadmap builds towards. That's what we've kind of like been kind of, that's our guiding principle when it comes down to the game, is you are the military. You're the one trying to basically make a sense of how are you going to stop Chelsea? How are you going to stop this virus infection? And obviously, by your choices, everyone lives or dies. um, let's see. Let me see if I can answer your question here. So, good question for versus mode. Um, it's to kind of repeat myself from earlier, is that right now our goal is to get the Cirque as fleshed out and as replayable as possible and prioritize that roadmap for just generally, 12 plus hour experience of just them alone with your friends. Um, there's no plan right now for versus or for playing as the other factions at this time. That can always change based off of just how things go going into ending year one. But just kind of that's just right now our goal. Um, yes, and for your second question, yes, cosmetic mods will not be forced, but gameplay mods will be forced. So the idea is that we're going to be looking into having it where if you join a server and you don't have that mod, it'll tell you what you don't have and redirect you so you download it, or it will basically just download it for you. Those are two things that we're going to be looking into, and that's going to be our design goal when we're doing the modding for an entire month or two, is just make sure that those systems are in place. So if you want to both play a Starship Troopers mod or like a Halo or a Star Wars mod, you can. And everything will be replicated, and everyone can see it, and you're all on the same page. That is the major design goal for the modding, is to make sure that is situated. Um, I can't answer that question yet for being able to play as the zombies, because it kind of comes back to just that is outside the scope of year one, what we're trying to do. I give it to you. It'll be an amazing thing if we could, get to that point. But right now, it's just not a goal. Right now, first we got to ship the roadmap we already kind of have established, and then from there we'll expand for things that are viable for this, what we could do as a team. Um, any other questions that you guys have?
Monster Party asked if we're going to add tanks.
I said that basically we would love to add the Bradley and the M1 Abrams, but it kind of comes down to we're still discussing those internally in terms of just making sure we don't overindulge a little too much, because we kind of have the Striker that's this multi-rolled vehicle, but we might end up getting to the point of implementing it and we're like, this doesn't feel right. They need a heavy hitter. They need something that can actually go duke it off with the worm, and have more armor, and you could build a team of them and maybe fight the worm with them. So I mean, that's something we're going to kind of go back to, I would say, when we finish the doctors, we finish the vehicles based off of player feedback and just how the game feels. Because me and Chris personally want to add Edwin Abrams and the Bradley. It's just that, feature creep and scope, we want to keep it limited. and we want to just kind of promise deliver on what we can actually promise. Or promise, you know what I mean. So yeah. Any other questions? Let's see. Let's see if I can pull a question from the fillers that we have from Discord. Oh, here's one from Flame Turret. Okay. I don't think we have any plans for a Flame Turret, do we, Chris?
Actually, never even talked about it.
No.
It is kind of cool though.
Shit. Write that down. So, was totally not stealing your idea,
Wait,
Monster
yeah.
Buddy. Sorry.
Yeah, where's Ashley when we need her?
Right? She's gonna kill us. She's watching right now. But yeah, yeah, no, legitimately, that's a good idea. We're gonna add that. We're gonna definitely dabble with that one. Let's see if I can find another question. So Lemon had a question about city buildings being destructible because he loves explosions and physics and fire and smoke. That is definitely something that I kind of briefly touched upon, but we are playing around with implementing Epic's new version of Chaos Destruction. So we are definitely going to be going down that route of having it to where if you have a very high class vehicle that's heavy, you can drive through trees and they'll fall over. When you load a save game, they'll be permanently gone. You could drive through wood fences. You could drive through, certain like brick, like areas of like like the actual like walls that are outside of the living community where Chelsea resides, like her little compound. If people don't know, that compound to the bottom left where you spawn is actually Chelsea's villa where she lives and grew up. So you'll be able to drive through those walls. You'll be able to drive over like the actual like poles and things in the city. And when you throw explosions, they'll break and give. So those are things that we're looking into. Yes. Widow, to answer your question, that will be in the factions update. Where basically we're just gonna start populating the city with with basically civilians that will fight you or they'll fight the infected or they'll run around and die horribly and then get infected and then turn on you. Because the same way your units, it doesn't really happen that often because we've kind of turned down the infection mutilators currently. But the same way your units can get infected is the same way civilians around them get infected. And maybe you get one unlucky one day. Maybe some civilians got away from a fight and they turn, and you're not paying attention and they slaughter your guys. So definitely there's going to be that level of randomness where the clock is always ticking in terms of like what everyone's doing. And the idea is simulating what people are doing across the city at all times. So you can start to see like the civilians to the number over every province that you kind of take over. Electric fences are in the doctrine system. We're actually adding that to the engineers core. You'll be able to build an electric fence that you can attach to a generator, and whenever they touch it or melee it, they'll get damaged, essentially. It'll be one of the highest health walls you can build, and that's coming in sometime next month. Um, and then, Chris, you want to talk about the active denial system we were talking about, maybe? It kind of
I actually don't remember that.
Oh, well, I'll talk about it then. We're playing with a system where basically you could charge up a tower. And that tower will basically, for the engineer's core, where once you charge it to a critical mass and you press a button over it, it'll basically disperse a loud sound that'll basically stun and incapacitate AI, well, the infected factions equally. And that'll go into the engineer's core. So the engineer's core is defense, turtling, basically like you take zones, you fortify them, you build a lot of defensive placements, you build mortars, and you do very slow, staggered advancements. So that'll be an idea of something we're building towards the engineer core. And the idea is that it'll take maybe 40 seconds to recharge that. So next time you can shoot it. So if your wall is about to be overran, or if there's such a large amount of horde that's coming towards your base, you can activate that, and that could buy you some precious time. Maybe get some turrets online, maybe get your defense force in position, or even start infecting more casualties than you normally would before they can even start hitting your walls. So that's something we're kind of like bringing to kind of work with the electric fence. Is that not only will they get electrocuted and get hurt from that, but you could stun them with that AOE building that we're going to be adding in. Excuse me. So, let's see. Any other questions for you guys? Oh, here's one for you, Chris. Well, just before we wrap it up, give people some time to formulate their questions. Will the
Excellent.
two AI factions perform roaming patrols and perform their own missions and objectives, or are they static until you make them angry with you?
They will be performing Roman patrols. Like I already said, with Nally's faction, they're survivalists. They're going out there taking supplies from innocent civilians, from the police faction, from CERC, whoever they can get anything from. And if they bump into the police faction, they're not going to like each other. They're going to start getting into fights. You can intervene. You can take a side. You can sit back and watch. You can see the infected charge after them and have fun just watching it all unfold.
Pretty much. And then,
We
yeah.
do want to add missions for each of the factions. Again, that helps boost your reputation with them. Still working on that system, but it should be pretty cool once it's all in.
Yep. And then on that note, we're also playing with basically just kind of like no, we don't have anything right now for evacuating the surviving population through CERC. I don't know if there was a lore reason, and I'm not sure how bad the virus is. Maybe Chris, you could jump in there because we keep getting it
Well,
a lot.
within the story, they're evacuating them to Angel Island.
Right. So anybody
Yeah,
who did
so
he's right.
yeah, so they are taking them. You as a player are not personally evacuating them, and we might add something like that, but it is happening, and Chelsea can manipulate like she can have dormant virus within you, and once you're off the island into another facility, like in the city, she can then activate it, and that's how she's spreading the virus outside the containment. And so on Angel Island, like as we stated already, there's a big naval base that we're building there, and a lot of the survivors are being taken there. And then once there's enough of them, she activates the virus, and it's like a bomb going off in the middle of that base, and then the infected starts spreading out.
Let's see if there's any other questions I can pull from the AMA channel. I'll do two more, and then we'll call it there. Let's see if I can pick a good one. So, public opinion is anything that could basically hinder you firing on anyone. But we kind of touched on that one. You want to, I guess, go one more on that, Chris?
Well, yeah, it's in the doctrines. You can choose to be nice with the people, or you can choose to attack them based on the situation. It could be easier sometimes to eliminate civilian population that's in your way, especially if you need to get to an objective, or you can even use civilians to your advantage as the infected start to attack them. Again, these are systems we have to still work with, and we have to, when we start putting civilians into the game, you'll start to see this come online, and we have to see really what works and what doesn't at this point.
Yeah. Let me see. One more question. Let me just pick one out from the group. Let's see.
Actually, the infected are not eating anybody. Their goal is to spread the infection.
Yeah, so spread it as widely as possible. So when your units die, that's something we're going to be actually changing. Because your units aren't going to actually die anymore when they get hit enough times. They're actually going to start turning. We're going to be making that change pretty darn soon, actually. So now your units, like when they just completely are screwed, they'll fall on the floor, and then turn, and then get back up, and then start trying to kill your other units. So you'll start. The infection system is going to become a lot more active in later builds, because you'll start to use the DNA a lot more. You'll start to actually have to research immunity, research a cure, well, teching towards a cure. Having syringes, so if your units are infected in the field, they have to inject themselves. That ran well periodically to keep the infection level down. Resupplying an outpost. the syringes, so you have a permanent cure in late game. Those are all things that we are building and working on, because right now the infection system does need a bit of a facelift. Um, Theoretically, you could tell your units to attack ground and throw a grenade at them. I mean, theoretically, you could do it. Or you could just delete them. If you're really an asshole, right before your unit turns, you can just click on him, hit the delete key, and he'll commit suicide. Most people don't know that, but you can actually tell your units to commit suicide to free up population. So, 10 out of 10.
It's camaraderie for you.
Yeah. Let's see. Alright, the actual last question. Let's see. Let me pick one out. Okay, so there was actually a slide that we had. This one right here. This was an early idea that we might return to later on, where basically the idea was that you could take some of the civilians under your wing and protect them in little encampments. This is something that we were playing with earlier in development. We're not sure if it's going to fit within the scope of just kind of like how things play now, but that is something that we're kind of like, I guess you could say it's modeled and we're playing with it. We're gonna most likely end up testing it again when Factions is in. So you can basically bring civilians in and they'll live in these little gated communities. And maybe that would be the connection to what Chris was saying, is being able to transport them from these civilian holds in small quantities to Angel Island. And then maybe you get a cash incentive to basically the more people that you save from those zones. Our concern was with just Treasure Island at the time was how quickly you'd empty the island if you had these in the early versions of the build. But I guess the argument can be made is that because we're having so many provinces now, so like 3 different maps that are being added, it would make sense anyway of like, Chelsea's not going to be, her ticket is not going to be extinguished as easily now that she has a lot more places to go to. So I can see this being something that we're going to play with to basically kind of tie Angel Island in a little bit more closely to Treasure Island. And even just the other provinces, this is where they send the civilians, this is where some of the captured infected that they have go there. And this might be a recycled way of getting them there, where you'd go to each zone and you'd build a civilian hold, and then civilians would just start randomly showing up and eating and living there, and then you'd get a certain amount that gets sent off to the Angel Island over time. But again, that's something we're going to be playing with. It's on the roadmap because it's something that it's still like we're getting a feel for it. To make
It's
sure
live game development.
Yeah, it's one of those things where we're just kind of like, it's always live. We're always playing with it. We're always experimenting. So as Chris said, we're going to be reactionary. I'm just kind of like, okay, does this feel right? Put it out the public testing, and then from there put it out to normal, to the general audience after it goes through public testing, for anyone that just kind of wants to give their opinion first early. And that's another thing I would say, is that if you guys want to see what we're playing with any given time, play the public testing build, but just know there's going to be crashes, there's going to be instability, it's going to be, oh god, lots of bugs. But like right now, if we want to go and try out the joint tactical vehicle with the 50 cal upgrade and the motor pool, and try out the scout cars and see how they feel and drop some of your opinions, I'd highly encourage you guys to just right-click your game, go to properties, go to betas, and opt into the public testing build. Just make sure that when you switch back to the other build, you delete your save file if it carries over for some reason, just because bugs will occur beta versus what the actual public version is. Other than that, anything else you guys want to add to any of the questions before we wrap?
Nope.
Okay. So, yeah, let me just kind of pull it to the last slide. Right, pull it back here.
Welcome to the second monthly update.
and we'll go ahead and just put the screens up. So again, thank you everyone that came to essentially, ask you questions. We love the feedback. We love that you guys have the honesty and just like, you're not gonna hurt our feelings. You can come on our Discord and tell us we have a bad idea. We don't give a shit. At the end of the day, we're all here to make the best possible game, and it takes too long to be nice. So definitely, it's one of those things where we love our community. It's grown above beyond our wildest imaginations. It continues to grow. You guys are amazing. Um, anything any of you guys want to say before we end it there?
Yeah, just thank you everybody for coming. And I hope to do more of these in the future. I really enjoyed it.
Right on. Anyone else want to add before we wrap there?
Yep, I think it's already been said.
Alrighty. Well, again, thank you all, and have a good evening or morning, depending on where you are.